Foreign Minister Joseph Wu, thank you so much for talking with VOA during this time.
Well, thank you very much for interviewing me.
I wanted to ask you first, we've seen China announce an end to these drills around Taiwan. However, there's many people who sort of fear that there will be some sort of change to the status quo. Can I ask you, to what extent has the immediate threat passed?
If you look at the real situation along the median line of the Taiwan Strait, the Chinese military drills still goes on. And they, just yesterday, they sent 11 jet fighters cut through the median line of the Taiwan Strait, and that is rather provocative. So even though they announced the end of the joint military exercises around Taiwan, but some of their military activities continue, and it's very threatening. And if we talk about the status quo, especially the medium line of the Taiwan Strait, it's been there for decades, safeguarding peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, and it's a high symbol of the status quo. And the Chinese government, beginning from last year, saying that there's no such thing as the medium line of the Taiwan Strait, and their Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that the whole Taiwan Strait is China's sovereignty, and they have sovereign rights to it. And they do not want the international flights or transportations to go through the Taiwan Strait. And this is a clear sign of China wrecking the status quo and the peace and stability in this area. And I think the Taiwanese people also observe that. They understand that China is becoming very provocative and very reckless in terms of its military aggression against Taiwan.
We've heard a lot about the Nancy Pelosi visit. You know, people have gone back and forth. Should she have come? Should she not have come? But I wanted to ask you, would China have done these moves anyway? Were they just sort of looking for an excuse to do some of the things that they've done over the past week or so?
There's several points we can make about this. The first is if you look at the trajectory of the Chinese military threat against Taiwan, it's been increasing very rapidly in the last few years. And therefore, with or without Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, the Chinese military threat is there already. And if they don't use the excuse of Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, they will try to find other excuses. You know, for example, many people recognize that the current Taiwanese government, under the leadership of President Tsai, has been very responsible and very moderate. And the Chinese reaction to us is that no, we are not we are not following the line provided by China, and therefore Taiwan existence is the pursuit of Taiwan independence and just being provocative. And therefore they can always find excuses to threaten Taiwan militarily. So this is the first. The second is that China is always getting angry. They're asking other people to do things or not to do things according to China's will. And if we all listen to China because we are afraid that China might get angry, Taiwan is not going to get any support from the international community. And the international community is not going to provide support to Taiwan at the time that Taiwan needs it. Look at the way China is reacting to Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, or other senators' visit to Taiwan, or other countries speaking up for Taiwan. For example, the recent G7 statement put it very strongly that the peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait is very important. The Chinese government just summoned each and every one of those countries and demarched them. You can see that they are getting very angry. But we need to remember, if we are doing the right things, the Chinese anger should not stop us from doing so. And if we take Chinese anger too seriously, it will hinder our basic principles or our values. Taiwan is a democracy. Taiwan believes in freedom and democracy and the protection of human rights. And we are sharing all these values with like-minded partners. And it's a very good foundation for us to continue to work together with the international community. And if there's going to be anyone who wants to come to Taiwan to show their support, they are more than welcome to visit us. And that should not be stopped by China. And look at China's way of dealing with Speaker Pelosi's visit. Uses military threat against Taiwan by assembling a large number of jet fighters and surface ships, and also launched its missiles to the east of Taiwan. And this is very threatening. And this is not in line with the most fundamental principle of the United Nations. If you look at the Charter of the United Nations, peace is the most fundamental value to this international community, and is the most important value in the rule-based international order. And China has no right to violate that international norm, but China has been wrecking that basic values of the international rules-based international order.
I wanted to ask you about the white paper that China released earlier this week. As many observers noted, it sort of degraded the amount of autonomy that they envision for Taiwan. And I wanted to get your comment on that. But I must ask you too about, there's been a couple of Chinese diplomats who in various foreign media have recently spoken of the need to eventually re-educate Taiwanese. It's interesting because when I go around here and talk to people in Taipei, I don't find too much support for the idea of being re-educated by the Chinese Communist Party. Can you respond to that as well, please?
First thing about that white paper, it reiterates lots of statements or principles that the Taiwanese people have no interest in. For example, the one country, two system model. There might be some people still have the fantasy that if there's going to be a unification, one country, two system model might not be too bad. But that kind of idea has been destroyed, totally destroyed, by the way the Chinese government is treating Hong Kong. Hong Kong used to be one of the freest societies in East Asia. But with the imposition of the national security law, there's not a piece of freedom left for the Hong Kong people. And the people here in Taiwan watched it and know that that is something that we don't want to accept. So that white paper pointed out that one country, two system model is for Taiwan. And the Taiwanese people, I would say that they don't even bother to react to that because it's so ridiculous. It ignores the basic facts that Taiwanese people don't want it. And the second is about the Chinese diplomats. It's very interesting that it's not only the Chinese ambassador to Paris. The kinds of reactions comes from the Chinese diplomats everywhere around the world. And I'm not sure whether that is in line with the Chinese interest. When the Chinese ambassador in Paris mentioned about re-education of the Taiwanese people after reunification, I think the Taiwanese people are going to laugh him out of town after that kind of statement. The reason is very clear. We live in a free society, and freedom and democracy has become part of our lives, and we believe in that. And if the Chinese government want to change that, the Taiwanese people are going to say, no way.
I wanted to ask you about the U.S. Response to the current tensions. I mean, obviously, Joe Biden has, over the past year, said multiple times that the U.S. would defend Taiwan militarily. Of course, his staff have then sort of clarified those comments. But then I wanted to ask you about the U.S. response, specifically in the context of this week. Because what we've seen is the U.S. and Taiwan, to be fair, sort of emphasizing de-escalation, giving the Chinese military space to sort of get closer to Taiwan than it ever has before. What's the impact of that? And what would you like to see sort of broadly from U.S. policy moving forward on the Taiwan issue?
2 points. The first point about U.S. and Taiwan reaction to the current Chinese military provocation. We understand that the United States wanted to de-escalate and want to appear to be very responsible, wanted to stay calm, and we have full respect in that. After all, these are the approaches to make sure that it does not escalate to the degree where war is about to happen. And we appreciate the U.S. effort in this regard. By the same token, we are doing the same. We have not been trying to provoke China. And during this crisis, you can also tell that the Taiwanese government is also wanting to use calm and responsible as a ways to deal with China. And we are very confident that we have the ability to deal with the Chinese military provocation. And we don't want to give an inch, but at the same time, we don't want to be appearing to be provocative as China. And if we appear to be provocative, we might not be able to get the current international support. So in these long-term confrontation in between Taiwan and China, we will stay calm and we will stay confident. At the same time, we want to be a responsible stakeholder in this region.
My last question for you is on sort of the regional situation. You've recently made comments saying that China's military exercises sort of threaten regional security. If you could elaborate on that and then sort of explain how you would like regional governments to sort of respond to that sort of new reality.
Well, China has been trying to expand. To expand is authoritarianism. And the countries around the world seem to understand the problem with it. If you allow me a few minutes to explain what we have observed, and this observation has also been shared by many international friends. Of course, after Hong Kong, many people have already understand that China is going after Taiwan. But Taiwan is not the only place where China claims its sovereignty. It wanted to use military force to take it over. Look at East China Sea. China also claims Diaoyutai. And the way China reacted to that is to send its surface ships or Coast Guard ships or their airplanes to the region to continue to patrol the region. Used to be patrolled by Japan or administered by Japan. But now the Chinese Coast Guard ships go to Diaoyutai area, the disputed area, on a daily basis. Now the Chinese Coast Guard ships start chasing away the Japanese fishing boats. So this is also a change of status quo. And I'm sure our Japanese friends are very nervous about this. And look at the Chinese missile launches, or the missiles launched a few days ago into some area claimed by Japan as its EEZ. And you can see from the reactions of the Japanese friends, they are not amused because it threatened Japan. And broadly speaking, South China Sea is also a disputed area. The Chinese way of doing it is that I claim this whole body of water is mine. And then I started building tiny little rocks into major military bases. Now they have 7 military bases in the South China Sea, and they are building more. And this is the way they use international law and their claim over the area to do something that is against the international law, especially the 1982, the UN, let me see, UNCLOS, the UN Convention on the Law of the Seas. So this is something that we have observed. And of course, the Chinese activities in the South China Sea got all of us very nervous. Not only the United States, but also Australia, Japan, and the countries surrounding South China Sea. And this is not the end. These are all within the first island chain. The Chinese seem to be wanting to claim all this area and to be in control of this area. And in the last few years, if you see the Chinese naval exercises and some of the air exercises as well, they went through the first island chain to go into the Pacific. And sometimes they are very close to Guam or very close to Hawaii. And you can tell the ambition of China over the Pacific. Earlier this year, the Chinese government signed a security agreement with the Solomon Islands. And I think a lot of people in the Pacific got waken up because of that. The Australian government, New Zealand government, the Japanese government also got very nervous about this situation. They think that the military presence by China may come at some point, and that will be right at the doorstep of our great friend, Australia. And that is not conducive to regional peace and stability. And the Chinese government wanted to do more with the Pacific countries other than the Solomon Islands. And if it's not for the courageous move of FSM, then the Chinese government might make it to sign security agreements with all the Pacific Islanders. So this is a situation that allows us to know that China's ambition is not limited to Taiwan. And that is something that we all need to watch out very carefully. And this is the Pacific. And if you look at the Indian Ocean or far beyond, you can see that China is much more ambitious than just the Pacific. They have built the string of pearls along the Indian Ocean. They built military bases. They wanted to buy some ports of the countries. And they come all the way to the Horn of Africa and build a military base in Djibouti. And their influence in Africa is unprecedented, far more than Europeans or the United States or Japan combined. And if you look at the political trend in Latin America, I personally also worry very much the leftist trend of politics in Latin America is going to provide an opportunity for China to exercise its influence in this region. So if you put all this together, China has a global ambition to expand its power of authoritarianism. And looking at this situation, I think the answer is very clear, is that all democracies need to work together to find common measures to deal with this. After all, freedom and democracy is what we treasure. We cannot allow authoritarianism to destroy what we believed.
Foreign Minister, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely welcome.